McNabb's Island. It was the summer of 2019 when Canadian couple Paula and her husband Doug decided to take advantage of a rare weekend away from their 3 young children. Paula's mother, Barbara, had generously offered to watch over 9-year-old Zach and 6-year-old twins Felicia and Marissa for the weekend. With the kids taken care of, the couple jumped at the chance for a much-needed camping getaway. Doug, an avid military history buff, had his sights set on the perfect destination, McNabb's Island in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a former 19th century military outpost turned local tourist attraction located just off the coast. The small island boasted walking trails, old barracks buildings, antique cannons, and even a family graveyard belonging to its former owners, the McNabbs. For Doug, the prospect of exploring such a richly historic site, steeped in wartime relics, was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. While Paula didn't share her husband's passion for military antiquities, she was willing to indulge his interests, just as he often did for her. However, her enthusiasm was tempered by one major reservation: the widespread rumours that the island was haunted. A self-professed believer in the paranormal, Paula couldn't shake her apprehension about spending a night on grounds reputed to be a hotbed of supernatural activity. Despite her misgivings, the couple made their way to McNabb's Island on the appointed day, arriving at around 6 p.m. as the sun began its descent below the horizon. They swiftly set up camp, determined to make the most of the fading daylight hours. However, their plans for an evening campfire were thwarted by the island's status as a provincial park, which prohibited open flames. The impending darkness only amplified the eerie ambience that had already begun to envelop the island. As night fell, Paula and Doug found themselves shrouded in an unsettling silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic crash of waves against the shoreline. They passed the time playing cards and listening to music on Paula's phone, attempting to dispel the unease that had settled over them. It was around 11:30 p.m. when Doug suddenly grabbed Paula's hand. His eyes widened with alarm. "Shh, did you hear that?" he whispered urgently. "I think I heard someone singing." Their concerns were initially put to rest as they remembered their friend Jaden, who had ferried them to the island earlier that day, assuring them that they were the only visitors on McNabb's Island that night. However, soon after, Paula's heart rate spiked as her fretting mind began conjuring visions of restless spirits roaming the island's grounds. Attempting to reconcile these fears and rationalise the unsettling sound, Paula suggested that the eerie cries they had heard earlier, which had resembled the whistling of wind through the island's cannons, could also account for the apparent singing. Yet an uneasy silence lingered between the couple, interrupted only by the occasional rustle of leaves or creak of old wood. Each innocuous sound only magnified their heightened state of alertness. An hour later, the call of nature forced them to reluctantly venture beyond the confines of their tent. Unwilling to brave the pitch-black darkness alone, they agreed to accompany each other, using the beam of their flashlight to guide their way. As Doug relieved himself, Paula swept the flashlight's beam along the nearby trail, her eyes drawn to a cluster of slender, swaying trees that seemed to dance hypnotically and translucently in the wind's embrace. Their ethereal movements held her transfixed until Doug's voice snapped her out of her trance, prompting her to hurry back into the tense relative safety. That night, sleep eluded the troubled couple and was marked by sporadic periods of restlessness and disturbing fever dreams. In Paula's case, she found herself tormented by visions of 3 children, aged about 7 to 10, inexplicably entering their tent and demanding to know their business on the island, claiming to be some form of authority. Upon waking from one of these unsettling dreams, Paula was startled to find that Doug had also been roused from his sleep at the very same moment, a seemingly harmless coincidence that nevertheless left her feeling deeply unnerved. They huddled together, sharing a cigarette in an attempt to steady their high-strung nerves. Then suddenly, the stillness of the night was once again shattered by the unmistakable sound of a woman's voice, softly singing an indistinct melody. This time, there could be no mistaking the phenomenon for mere wind or waves. It was the haunting resonance of a human voice drifting across the island's grounds. With the first rays of dawn came no relief, only a heightened sense of urgency to leave the island as quickly as possible. As they hastily packed their belongings, Paula's gaze once again fell upon the trail she had illuminated the previous night, only to find the strange, otherworldly cluster of trees she had observed entirely absent. Not a single trunk or branch remained where they had so vividly swayed mere hours before. Doug, too, confirmed witnessing the same phantom spectacle, leaving them both shaken and desperate to flee the island's increasingly ominous atmosphere. In a state of barely contained panic, they placed an urgent call to their friend Jaden, pleading with him to return and retrieve them from the island. As they hurried toward the beach to await his arrival, an uneasy silence fell over the couple, broken only when Paula finally attempted to recount her disturbing dream of the 3 children. However, before she could finish, Doug cut her off, his face pale as he recounted the exact same dream, a chilling revelation that left Paula stunned, her already fragile composure on the verge of breaking. As if the harrowing events of the night were not enough, their nightmarish odyssey took a final, horrifying turn as they inadvertently stumbled upon the island's long-abandoned graveyard, a sprawling necropolis that had escaped their notice the previous evening, mere steps from where they had unwittingly pitched their tent. In that moment, the implications of the 3 children's presence in their shared dream became all too clear, their blood running cold at the realisation that the island's restless spirits may well have included those of the youngsters, interred in the very ground they had so carelessly trodden onto. By the time Jaden arrived to whisk them away, Paula and Doug were consumed by a deep dread that would continue to colour their memories of that fateful weekend. As Jaden casually inquired about their stay, the haunted expressions on their faces told him all he needed to know. It was only then that Jaden revealed the grim truth, that their chosen campsite, nestled beside the old barrack and mere footsteps from the island's graveyard, was widely regarded as the most intensely haunted location on all of McNabb's Island. The ghostly encounters they had endured, from the disembodied singing to the vanishing ethereal trees and shared dreams, were all too familiar to those who had dared to linger in that forsaken area after nightfall. In the aftermath of their harrowing experience, Paula vowed never again to set foot on McNabb's Island, even during daylight hours, which had just the previous day seemed so innocuous. For Doug and their children, she reluctantly conceded that they could visit the island if they so chose, but that she could never bring herself to return. Paula was too haunted by the memories of that long, terror-filled night and the supernatural forces that still held sway over the island's hallowed grounds. Tracy's childhood home. In the humid southeast Texas town of Beaumont, the Blackwell family experienced numerous encounters over many years that would continue to instill them with dread. The events began in 1986, soon after moving into their new house. To the outside world, the house seemed like an unassuming residence. But within its walls, strange and disturbing occurrences were about to unfold. At the young age of 6, young Tracy Blackwell started having bizarre run-ins that she couldn't understand. For years she was visited by the apparition of a little girl she didn't recognise. Tracy had initially assumed this ghostly figure was simply the daughter of family friends coming over to play. Little did she know a supernatural force was taking effect. The mysterious girl would routinely wake Tracy in the night, asking in an unsettling tone when her own father was returning. Despite the late hours, the girl always appeared wide awake, with dark circles under her glaring eyes and an eerily pale complexion. Her stringy blonde locks hung well past her shoulders, her bangs mirroring Tracy's textbook 80s feathered style. The girl's outfit was just as striking, a grey and white polka dot dress adorned with a matching striped apron. On her feet were old-fashioned buckle shoes, reminiscent of what a stereotypical pilgrim might wear. Her socks were folded down, revealing lace trim circling her tiny ankles. To Tracy's 6-year-old mind, the girl appeared dishevelled. It wasn't until Tracy finally described the girl to her parents, Sam and Joanna Blackwell, that the truth came to light. The couple turned ghostly white, rasping, "You saw her too." The veil was lifted. This was no ordinary playmate. Tracy's parents recounted having seen the girl's apparition on multiple occasions. On one occasion, in Tracy's bedroom, Joanna spotted what she thought was her daughter sitting before her toy box, only to then glimpse her real daughter frolicking outside minutes later. When she raced back upstairs to investigate, there was no girl to be found, just toys strewn about an empty bedroom. That wasn't the only paranormal activity plaguing the property. Their dog Ralph, normally a mild-tempered golden retriever, would become frantic, barking and growling at unseen forces as if being tormented. Inexplicably, Ralph often found himself confined in the laundry room, the door's inside latch engaged as if by an invisible hand. Strange sounds emanated from the attic at all hours, heavy stomping, loud bangs, even the scrape of objects being dragged across the floor above their heads. Each time, Tracy's father would venture upstairs with a flashlight and baseball bat, only to find the room vacant and undisturbed. One particularly harrowing night, the house plunged into darkness during a power outage. In the blackness, something violently struck Sam's face, leaving both eyes swollen and bruised. Joanna insisted she hadn't touched him, instead accusing Sam of allegedly trying to drown her in the bathtub during the outage. It was later determined that both parents were at opposite sides of the house while the traumatic events transpired. Most inexplicable of all were the 4 separate blazes that engulfed the parents' bedroom during their time living at the property. Eerily, the fire seemed to start spontaneously, with no apparent source. Each time the flames were confined to that single room before being extinguished. Decades later, Tracy still vividly recalls the haunting presence that plagued her childhood home. While she's experienced other brushes with the paranormal since, the foreboding little girl seeking her father remains forever etched in her memory. Tracy often reflects on that house's restless soul, forever wondering if the tormented girl ever reunited in death with the father she had seemingly so desperately longed for in life.